All right, my friends, welcome to Deeper Dives, Elizabeth Larkam, number 2. I know many of you joined us last time for volume number 1. Those videos are now on the Balanced Body website. So if you need to see a recording and want to catch up, feel free to do that. And it is again my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Larkam, one of the truly pioneers in our industry and one of those who have continually pushed the envelope in terms of bringing science and movement together. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Nora. Welcome, everybody, and welcome back. It's such a pleasure to be with you on the Balanced Body platform. I'm so grateful to Balanced Body for bringing us all together. We are all in this together. And so what a great opportunity to come together, to support each other, and also to learn together, which is one of the ways that we grow and we flourish. Today's focus is on proprioception. Proprioception for your own practice, and proprioception so that you can teach it and encourage it, really encourage and facilitate proprioception in your work with your clients, both online and also in person in the studios when we're fortunate that they will open. So in preparation for this, perch high on your sitting bones, lift your heart, the area of your mid-sternum, up, and move your brain up and back so that now your brain has a foundation on top of your heart rather than vice versa. Chest bone, heart area forward and up, brain back and up. Close your eyes. Rest your eyes in the recesses of your eye sockets. Rest your tongue at the floor of your mouth. Imagine a big empty space behind your eyes. Now, gliding your eyes behind closed lids to the left corner of your eye sockets. As you inhale, turn your head, your neck, your shoulder girdle, your thorax, your ribs, as if the glide of your eyes to the left behind closed lids was encouraging the rotation of your torso. Exhale to come to center, renewing the relationship of the back of your brain, back and up. As you inhale, glide your gaze to the right corner of your eye sockets, and that movement of the eyes will encourage the turning of your head, your cervical spine, your thoracic spine. As if you could see in the deep space behind your closed eyes, as if you could see over your right shoulder. Exhale to come to center. Easy now, open your eyes, let the light in. Rub your palms together. Now, place the pads of your fingers at the base of your skull. I'll show you on the spine, on the skeleton, where that will be. So you will have your fingers pressing into the tissue in the suboccipital area, the area between, that's navigated by the occiput, the base of the skull, the posterior spinous processes of your spine, and the transverse spinous processes of your spine. So the pads of your fingers, that sensitive area, presses the tissue that would be in the concavity, sometimes called the gutter here, below your occipital area. So press in strongly so you have a firm touch. And now, close your eyes, Glide your gaze to the left corner of your eye sockets, and as you press in with your fingers, sense the change of tone in the tissues which your fingers are contacting. Exhale, center, and gliding your gaze to the right corner of your eye sockets, press in strongly with the pads of your fingers on either side of the posterior spinous processes, and notice the change of tone in the tissues below your fingers. Now open your eyes, and keeping your eyes open, glide your gaze to the left corner of your eye sockets. Press your tongue down to the right inner cheek, so the lower right cheek on the outside of your right teeth, the inside of your right cheek. Inhaling to continue the rotation, eyes gliding left, tongue pressing down to the right. Sensing, noticing the change of tone in the tissues in the suboccipital area. Exhale to come to center. And as you inhale, glide your gaze to the right corner of your eye sockets. The motion of your eyes will encourage the rotation of your head, your cervical spine, your thoracic spine. Press your tongue down to the left, on the outside of your lower left teeth, the inside of your left cheek. Exhale to come to center. Easy now. Let that go. Blink your eyes a little bit. Now, granted, that may have been a bit of a sensory and motor overload, that we had so much going on. The sensing of your fingertips, the pressure in the tissues in your suboccipital area, the coordination of the movement of your eyes, your tongue, and your cervical spine. That was intended to give you an experience of the differences in sensation and attention and awareness when you do movement without self-touch, just the eyes gliding. And then when you add the proprioceptive, the sensory input of self-touch to, I hope, enrichen the experience. And then when you add additional elements of neurological input with the tongue, then either the experience is enriched or it's destroyed because it's an overwhelm of the nervous system. So when you choose cues and input for your clients, particularly in this online world of teaching, educating, and communicating with each other, line up your toolkit possibilities, your technique possibilities, and then dole them out gently and gradually, watching to see and listening for feedback from your clients if their experience is enriched or if it's confusing or in a little bit of overwhelm. Now, I am missing, I know you're here, I know we're together. I'm just missing the opportunity for feedback at this moment, because if we were in the studio together, then I would say, oh, those of you in Seoul, what do you have to say about this experience? Did it make a difference? And oh, those of you in Italy, how's it going for you when you press the pads of your fingers into the suboccipital area? Well, let us know via chat, and I will do my best to carry on. Now, when you prepare yourself at the beginning of your day for teaching, or perhaps take an intermission between your Zoom class and your Zoom client, or your Skype class and your Skype client, it's useful to have a reset, a refreshing refreshing reset for your eyes. Last week, we went over the movement of the eyes, side to side, diagonals, up and down, circles, and figure eights. Don't panic. This is not a product placement. I'm not going to tell you to drink Coke or Pepsi or Mountain Dew or anything else, but I'll hide the label. But you can get some eye wash, it says eye wash, from your pharmacy and an eye cup. And every morning before it's time for me to face the camera, before the mascara, don't do this after the mascara, not good, but you put a little eye wash in the cup, suction the cup around your eye, and then do all the different eye placement motions that I just showed, and then rinse the cup and do the other side. After that, with refreshed gaze, you can put on your mascara, not before. Okay, now we've addressed some proprioceptive input for the cervical spine, connecting the movement of the eyes, the gaze, with the rotation of the head, the neck, the thorax, and even perhaps the pelvis and lumbar spine. Let's move now to the mat, where you can practice some proprioceptive input for articulate feet, ankles, and articulate hands and fingers. I'm just remembering that with my adrenaline zooming along, I forgot to tell you what the definition of proprioception is. My notes are right here, so just stay tuned. We'll get to that and put a little bit of more movement into this. Come to your mat now. Just make sure that ball's not in the way. It's good. That's good. Okay. Now, it's really important to encourage the development of proprioception, particularly in the online spaces, that you give your clients some opportunities for self-touch and sensory stimulation that they can practice at home. I suggested that you might bring your dry skin brush, and if not a dry skin brush, then some loofahs that you might have picked up the last time you were at a spa in the hotel. So to stimulate your feet, use the dry skin brush or the loofah and make a circular motion on the top of your foot, on the side of your foot, on the back of your foot, and also on the sole of your foot. Circular motions. Do the same with the foot on the other side, making a circle. And you might be thinking, oh, I know that I'm supposed to do this every day to facilitate general detoxification and have glowing skin, but I didn't realize that it was also available to stimulate proprioception. You heard it here first. Now, use the dry skin brush and make circles on the back of your hand, on the side of your hand, on the palm of your hand, the side of your hand, and the other side, making a daily ritual out of dry skin brushing. You could, we'll go on to other things now, but when you have the time, make your circular motions up to your shoulders, on either side, all sides of your arms, and also all the way up to your hip joints. Here's a little something you might not have known about me, but before I start the day of teaching, I'm dancing around the house with this dry skin brush naked, making sure that all the proprioception is alert and aware before sitting close to the screen to teach. Now, to develop articulate hands and feet, clap the sole of your foot, crossing one shin over the other. Spread your fingers, spread your toes, interlace your fingers with your toes so that you have the palm of your hand and the sole of your foot. They're in close proximity to each other. You shake hands with your own foot. Pleased to meet you. Have we met? Now exaggerate the motion of your shoulder blade gliding on your rib wall. Reverse the direction, exaggerating the motion. It's as if you could connect your shoulder blade through your arm, through your wrist, through your hand, to your foot, to your ankle. Same hand, same foot, same orientation, different interlacing. Now your thumb is on the inside. Then circle your ankle 3 or 4 times. Reverse the direction of the circle. Change now. Same hand, which is opposite hand from foot. Different orientation. Now interlace your fingers from above. Now the plot thickens in terms of sensory input and motor input as well. Because check this out. The arm is in a bit of internal rotation. The leg is in a bit of external rotation. And now it's the palm surface of your hand with the dorsal surface of your foot. And if we were having a lecture by somebody else, I assure you not me, on embryology and its implications for our neurological organization, well, this would be a good exercise. Change the interlacing. So if your little finger was on the inside of your big toe, now it's on the outside, or vice versa. So now you've had 4 different combinations of stimulation using the opposite hand to opposite hand and foot. That's from the sole of your foot, each interlacing, and from the dorsum of your foot, each interlacing. Change now to your other arm. So now it's the same side arm and leg, interlacing the fingers from the top, and exaggerate the motion of your shoulder blade gliding on your rib wall. Reverse the direction, your shoulder blade gliding. Same hand, same foot, same orientation, different interlacing. Change. And you may notice, she said, shamelessly leading the witness, you may notice that every time you make a change in the contact, the relationship of your hand and your foot, it makes a change all the way up the chain into your shoulder girdle, your scapula, even in the demands of rotation on the organization of your thorax. Same hand, same foot, different orientation. Interlace your fingers between your toes. I'll just mention that we are fortunate to be filming in the Balanced Body Studio, and every so often you might hear the forklift thundering by, tooting its horn. Same hand, same foot, same orientation. Interlace your fingers in the new way. So now you've had 2, 4, 6, 8 opportunities to stimulate the proprioception, your awareness of the movement relationships of your, really, so much of yourself, specifically your foot, ankle, your wrist and hand. Change now to the other side, and I will just mention that if you'd like to take notes, of course, you may. There are other ways that you can find this recorded. Now you have the, I'll explain them in a moment. Clap the hand to the sole of your foot. This is opposite hand to foot. Spread your toes, spread your fingers, interlace your fingers with your toes, and we start the whole project. Relaxing your jaw, your throat. Your shoulder blade is gliding on the curve of your thorax, encouraging mobility of your foot and ankle. Change the interlacing. You'll find this on this particular series on exercise at home with Balanced Body that I filmed last week. You'll also find this on Pilates Anytime. Change the orientation. Articulate hands and feet, a longer series. And you can find related material that stimulate the proprioception of your feet and ankles in Foot Festival on Pilates Anytime. changing the interlacing, reversing the direction. And of course, as Nora mentioned at the top of the class, the hour, you will find this in recording, which will be posted at 5 p.m. Pacific time the next day. That's on Friday, tomorrow. You change hands, the palm surface of your hand with the back of your foot. Now, this is a bit of a neurological conundrum here, because you have the same side hand to foot from the top, circling each direction. However, your foot is organized crossing the midline, so it's a little bit of an element of crossing the midline, which is relevant also for our neurological organization. Same hand, same foot, different orientation from the sole of your foot. And reverse the direction. And finally, change up the interlacing. Now, it's my experience and it's my observation that there's a big difference between having an intellectual understanding of these different relationships of hands, feet, ankles, wrists, a different experience from having an intellectual understanding. You could look at your notes and say, I got that. It's this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand. I could recite those on a test. However, it's the embodied experience, the kinesthetic experience, the proprioceptive experience that is so valuable for us as evolving individuals and for us as teaching beacons of supporting proprioception and kinesthesia. Because then it's our responsibility to create an opportunity, a world, a space for noticing blind spots or feeling the difference like, oh, I didn't realize that internal rotation of this hand to this foot required a glide of the scapula that my tissues had forgotten. Okay. Let us know how that experience goes for you, and let's move now to a focus on proximal stimulation. We've worked much more now on the distal movement of hands, wrists, feet, and ankles. And let's move to a proximal stimulation of sensing the positional relationship of the pelvis, the hip joints with the thorax. For this one, you will interlace your toes or not. Believe me, if your toes were ever prepared for interlacing, it's now, because you've just interlaced your fingers with your feet. But now you can either interlace your toes or press the palms of your feet. Don't forget to do that. Press the palms of your feet, the soles of your feet together. Now, here you are, ready for a bridge with rotation. Plant the palm of one hand on the ground next to your ear. Press the other hand on top of your elbow. Use the hand on your elbow to windshield wiper your elbows side to side. Appreciating the motion, the glide of your shoulder blade, your scapula, on the curve of your thorax, for which you are well prepared. Change. Place the other palm down and use your hand on your elbow to encourage movement, lateral and medial, of the elbow. That's the distal aspect of yourself. And then being aware of the proximal motion as well. As your hand presses your elbow away from your head, that can encourage scapular glide towards your spine and then towards your head. Scapula abducting. Place the first palm down again. If you have your right hand on the ground, slide your left heel on. No, don't do that. I made a mistake. If you have your right palm on the ground, slide your right heel on top.
Press with your right palm. Lift your pelvis in a bridge and rotate that bridge. Turn your head, neck, and eyes to look underneath your elbow. So your navel is aiming to the left. Your right gluteals, your right hip extensors are very active, and pulse, lifting your pelvis high and adding rotation using the ground force of your hand. Appreciating the length of the tissues on the front of your hip joint. And coming down. Change to the new side, or I should say that better, appreciating that this movement requires, or we hope encourages, length on the tissues at the front of your hip joint. Here, the emphasis of the proprioceptive awareness is on the positioning of your pelvis in space, with the pelvis and the lumbar spine turning right. You also have the contact with the ground from your palm, the contact with your hand to your elbow, the interlacing of your toes, and the ground force of the side of your foot and the side of your shin. So you can appreciate that there are many touch points here in this exercise, and the richer the touch points, so to speak, the richer the sensory input, oftentimes that will encourage, facilitate the awareness of the positions, the position of different aspects of yourself with respect to each other. So we've used the hands and the feet to effectively stimulate the positional relationship awareness of your pelvis and lumbar spine in space. Now let's go to a longitudinal spiral in which you have options. You can have your fingers interlaced with your hands on the top of your head, or you could have your fingers interlaced with your palms above you and your palms pressing into the wall. I'm just going to slide the skeleton just a little bit towards this direction. Put your spa items out of the way, and then align your right heel with your right sitting bone, spread your toes, and place your left Achilles between your first two toes. Now come to lie on your back, fingers interlaced, and press your palms into the baseboard, into the wall above you. Here you have your right heel in line with your right sitting bone. Now, just making that requirement is asking for a quite an advanced, subtle awareness of knowing where your right sitting bone is located, and for that matter, where your right heel is on the ground. So it might be a good idea to use the pads of your fingers when you're teaching, pardon me, and encourage the client to press into their right sitting bone, and then to check, to feel, to check to see that heel, the right side heel, is lined up with the same right side sitting bone. Come to lie on your back now. As you inhale, press with the heel of your left hand, turning your pelvis, ribs, shoulders. Yeah, that's an example of going on automatic with your cues. Don't do that, you'll make a mistake. As you inhale, press the left hand into the wall, turn your pelvis to the right, turn your head, neck, and eyes to the left. Exhale, center. Push with the heel of your right hand into the wall and turn your pelvis to the left. Now change the position of your right heel on the ground, line it up with your tailbone. And sometimes it's useful to take a visual check. I mean, don't look at your own tailbone, that would be strange, but just keep your right heel in line with it. As you inhale, left hand pushes, pelvis turns, head, neck, and eyes turn opposite, for which you're well prepared. Now relocate your right heel in line with your left sitting bone. Take a look. Ask yourself, is that lined up? I hope so. Left hand pushes, rotation, and right hand pushes, rotation. Change now to the new side. So your left heel, come up, do a sitting bone check. Left ischium, I got that. Skeleton does too. Put it down. Left heel in contact with the ground. Spread your toes and put your Achilles between your first two toes. Now, if you're finding that the pressure of your Achilles and your right heel between the first two toes of your left foot is not at all comfortable, it's not worth suffering for, really. Just take your Achilles away and cross the top ankle over the bottom ankle, because it's not a requirement for the proprioceptive benefits and the whole body rotation. It's not a requirement that you have your Achilles between your first two toes. It's a different experience, but this experience is also beneficial. Come down. Change the interlacing of your fingers. We could just say in more detail that when the right leg is on top, you would interlace your fingers as if to have the left index finger on top. As you inhale, press with the heel of your right hand into the wall and turn your pelvis, your legs, your feet, as if the little toe side of your left foot would aim in the direction of the ground. And then press your left hand into the wall and rotate the other way. Change in line with your tailbone, your top coccyx. Push with your right hand, turn to the left. Push with your left hand, turn to the right. And now line up your heel with your sitting bone. As you push with your right hand, use that ground force to encourage your pelvis, your lumbar spine, your legs, your feet to turn left, and your head, neck, and eyes turn opposite to see your right elbow. Exhale, center. As you inhale, press, turn, and rotate. Now that you've had this longitudinal experience of rotation in 6 different, 6 different arrangements, it's high time to address the elephant in the room. Who might that be? Well, that would be the thoracolumbar junction. In all of these longitudinal rotations, it is preferred or encouraged that as your pelvis rotates in one direction, you encourage a connection between your lower ribs and your ilium, that you have the idea that the back of the low lungs are heavy into your rib basket. So you stay connected through the anterior oblique sling system and connected also through your posterior oblique sling system. Since this whole body spiral is quite demanding for tissue glide on many levels, there is a tendency to hyperextend at the thoracolumbar junction in order to facilitate the motion. It would be preferable, when you do practice this again, to exhale, lower the back of your low lungs towards the ground, draw from pubic bone up underneath your xiphoid process, and return to the center. So by now you're probably saying to yourself, well, Elizabeth, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning and save me the problem of popping my ribs? Let me just tell you that you have to, in my experience, you have to choose your battles. Because if I had taken all of your time when I introduced the exercise to tell you all the different cues about what could go wrong, the way it should be, by that time you would have left the screen and gone out for coffee. So I made the decision, made the choice. I'm covering my tracks a little bit, but not that bad. Made the choice that it's preferable to have the movement experience. It's not dangerous for you to have practiced the way it is. Now that you've had the movement experience
and your tissues have had an opportunity to glide in a variety of planes, a variety of vectors, then we can revisit more of the anatomical requirements to recognize that, oh, this longitudinal activation could bring about hyperextension at the thoracolumbar junction, at the area of T1112L1. And in order to mitigate that or reduce that, you would have the idea of currenting the tissues, drawing from pubic bone up underneath the xiphoid process, currenting from the left ASIS to the lower right ribs, the right ASIS to the lower left ribs, and furthermore, having the opportunity to have the low lungs be heavy into the rib basket. You can notice in this, when I went down this track here, that each of us makes choices at every junction of our teaching. Each teacher makes a choice how much information to convey at what time. And it's always a decision tree because learning takes place in movement, and learning is enhanced with additional information that is conveyed verbally that requires auditory processing. But kinesthetic processing and auditory processing, they require different aspects, different organization of the brain. Given that we are movement educators, choose to teach in movement first and enhance your movement teaching with information. Now, I just have to ask for a time check. The time is?
Time is 9:37.
Aren't we making good time? Okay, so you have had the experience of some stimulating some proprioception distally, awareness of where you are in space distally, hands, feet, suboccipital area. You've also had the experience of focusing on the movement relationships of your pelvis, your ribs. Now, let's prepare for quadruped and standing by taking a version of single leg kick on steroids. I do not take drugs. I take vitamins, but not drugs. The single leg kick version we're going to do now has as its focus the positional relationship of the pelvis and the thorax, with a specific focus on the tissues at the front of the ilium, the front of the iliac fossa, the front of the hip joints. And you would know that from your anatomy in three-dimension studies as including the area of the iliacus. Come onto your front on your mat now, with your forearms on the ground, your elbows bent. Let's just see what we can do with the wall here, given that we have a wall. Okay. Press the pads, press the soles of the balls of your feet, the metatarsal heads, into the wall. As you press your bent elbows and forearms and the little finger side of your hand into the ground, drive a posterior pelvic tilt and spine flexion, such that you hover the front of your hip joints and your navel up off the ground, up off the mat. Now, flex one knee, bringing your heel to your sitting bone with dorsiflexion. As you exhale, intensify the ground force with your forearms, with your elbows. Intensify navel to spine. This is one of those moments that navel to spine cue is exactly what's needed. Drawing the navel towards the posterior spinous process of the third lumbar vertebrae and hover your thigh up off the mat in hip extension. Bring your knee down, change to the other side. Dorsiflex your next foot. Bring your heel to your sitting bone. Now drive a posterior pelvic tilt and spine flexion, drawing your pubic bone up towards your xiphoid process and hover
your left knee off the ground, which is left hip extension. Heel towards your hip, knee flexion. Exhale, posterior pelvic tilt and hip extension. Inhale, heel to your hip. Exhaling, posterior pelvic tilt and hip extension. Now, in all the decades that I have taught this single leg kick variation with the emphasis on posterior pelvic tilt and hip extension, there are not enough, I do not have enough hands and enough time to get around the room to correct everybody who is blissfully clueless, driving an anterior pelvic tilt the moment they go into hip extension, which defeats, not only causes damage and danger, but it also defeats the purpose of the exercise. So if you're home alone on your mat, as we all are these days, don't be delusional. Take the cues literally. Drive a posterior pelvic tilt, hover your knee off, and then go, oh! All that sitting at the computer, all that necessity of being online with my community has certainly wreaked havoc with the glide of the tissues at the front of the hip joint. Now, the reason that we have done, sorry, she said tripping over that. The reason that we have done that exercise is that the next two movements, how about this? Yeah, thank you. Heel to the sitting bone and then hip extension. The next two movements will take advantage of the preparation you just did to encourage glide of the tissues in the area of the iliacus that facilitates hip extension and knee flexion. This will not only get you out of your seat, the hip flexion required for many of us to be seated at the computer, but it will also free up the opportunity for thoracic extension rather than being tethered by the iliacus below. There are two forms of this exercise. One is to be in quadruped with the palms of the hands on the wall. Exhale, drive ahead of myself. Bringing your ears between your upper arms. As you inhale, press the little finger side of your hand into the wall. Pressure of the little finger side of your hand into the wall will encourage activation, will put force, put tension, in a good way, to the lateral aspect of the scapula, which will encourage scapular abduction and also help to facilitate the positioning of your scapula on the thoracic wall. As you exhale, tuck your toes under and glide your heel, push your heel back behind you. Hover your leg now in hip extension. If your left knee is on whatever knee is on the ground, push the opposite hand into the wall and reach around and hold on to something that belongs to you. Pointing your foot or plantar flexion your foot. Lift your tongue, lift your eyes, lift your gaze, lift your chest bone. Kick your ankle back into your hand and come up a little bit higher. Exhale to come down. Inhale. As you exhale, dorsiflex your foot. Press back through your heel, pressing into the little finger side of your hand, and hover your leg up. Now bend your knee and reach around and take a hold of something that belongs to you. At this moment, in this case, if you would be happy to use a band around your foot, that could be beneficial. Lifting your tongue, your eyes. When you dorsiflex your foot, that will make your abdominals stronger. Come down from this now.
I would just like to say, those of you who have worked with me in the studio know that I absolutely hate to be cold. I'm so happy in this studio. We've got all the lights on and it is so warm. And the fact that I'm a little bit nervous about teaching you anyway, my palms are sweating. So if I come skating down the wall, you'll know why that is. I'm not complaining, just stating the facts. Okay. Place your heels in line with your sitting bones. By now, you know where those two are located because you did the previous exercise. Press your palms wide and fingers spread into the wall. As you inhale, aim the little finger side of your hand into the wall. Tilt your pelvis in the direction of an anterior pelvic tilt, flaring your sitting bones up and back and wide. Press your tongue into your lower lip. That will encourage abdominal activation. Inhale to press your palms further into the wall. Not that the wall will move, but when you intensify that ground force, your elbows will extend. Don't hyperextend. And as you exhale, press back through one foot. Those of you who have a tendency towards, choose the other foot, why don't you, Elizabeth? Those of you who have a tendency towards elbow hyperextension, push the thumb side of your hand into the wall, and that will help to mitigate that. Taking the longest distance from the heels of your hands to the sole, to the toes of your lifted leg and hip extension. Reach back around. Take a hold of something that belongs to you. Now, tongue up to the roof of your mouth behind your upper teeth. Eyes up. Gaze up. Bring your hand a little higher to take good care of your wrist. Press into the thumb side and the little finger side of your hand. Press into the big toe onto the mat and lift your gaze. Lift your chest bone. Plantar flexion. Easy now. Come down for the new side. Inhale to prepare. As you exhale, let's try this. Press the thumb side and the little finger side of your hand into the wall, so that will facilitate with stability. Take the longest distance from the tips of your toes to your feet. If you dorsiflex your ankle, that will make your abdominals stronger. Plantar flexion of your ankle will make your hip extensors stronger. Press into the wall and reach around. Take a hold of something that's yours. Lift your thigh, lift your chest bone, lift your gaze, lift your heel, chest bone up, and gaze up. Easy now. Bring yourself down. And slide down this wall. Now, leave your mat. Come back to your screen. And if you have any anti-stress spray around, spray it now, because we might need some. Okay, let's just prepare for questions. But just to summarize now the take-home points. So if you have pen and paper or want to get a jump on this, you could take notes on the following. So healthy movement is reliant on proprioception. Proprioception being the awareness of being able to sense the positional relationships between your body parts, recognizing that your body is whole in case. But we'd like to encourage awareness of wholeness and connection. So your proprioception involves 4 components, and they involve 1, kinesthesia, which is your sense of position and your movement sense. 2, your sense of tension or force traveling through your neuromyofascial system. 3, your sense of balance, which we certainly addressed today. And 4, your sense of effort or heaviness. Sometimes if we sequence for success in our mat classes and individual sessions for our clients, sometimes the clients say, oh, I feel so much lighter now. And that could be an indication that the neuromyofascial system has benefited from your movement sequences, such that there's more fascia glide and an enhanced sense of proprioception or ease of positioning of body parts in space. Questions? How can we get our clients to do hand to foot proprioception work if they're extremely overweight? A big belly won't allow the hand to reach the foot. That is a very important point. There are many of our clients who do not have easy access from hands to feet. With my client who's well into his 90s, he's in his 99th year now, and with a knee replacement, he doesn't easily reach his foot. So at the beginning of his session, I have my gloves, and I use my hands to facilitate the movement of his feet. And he says, oh, this is revelatory. He says, I didn't used to like my feet. I didn't used to like my toes, but now I enjoy the way they feel. So you can do it for your clients. How does emphasizing the shoulder girdle movement improve ankle range? Good question. All righty then. Yes. Each of the grasps of each of the interlacing of your fingers has a different effect on the ankle axis of motion. So in each of the interlacings that we went over, there are different forces presented through the architecture of the ankle. And when you exaggerate the motion of your scapula, that encourages an increase in movement through the arm and through the hand into the ankle. It's a very good question, and there may be some answers from embryology that I'm not aware of. I was thinking more of just the transfer of force rather than the neurological connection, but good question. Apart from breathing, is there any other way we can encourage lesser tension of the tensor fasciae lata during longitudinal rotation?
Thoracolumbar fascia.
Oh, thoracolumbar fascia. Thank you. Apart from breathing, is there any other way we can encourage lesser tension of the thoracolumbar fascia during longitudinal rotation? Yes, prior to the exercise that we did with knees extended and hips in neutral or legs on the mat, you could do a mat rotation exercise of knees bent and feet on the ground, arms outstretched. Cross your right thigh over your left thigh. As you inhale, lower the back of your lungs towards the ground, turning head, neck, and eyes opposite. So you can decrease the tension in the thoracolumbar fascia here by having a shorter lever and doing this oppositional rotation. You can consider that an exercise that would help you, quote, sequence for success. Good question. Thank you for that. Thank you for your compliments. Listen, I really appreciate when you say you are hilarious, because look, those of you who know me, we've worked together. I take what we do very seriously. Look, it's my reason for being on this earth, to teach movement for healing, and to do that with you, with the balanced body community, with the global Pilates community. But if I just showed up crying and serious all the time, it would be no fun at all. So it's really important to make fun of yourself. Okay, you're welcome for offering these classes. It's our pleasure. Thank you for coming. Can you demonstrate and explain the tongue to the lower lip to activate the abdominals? Okay, spit out your coffee now, don't drool. When you press the tongue into the lower lip, that encourages activation of the flexor system of our structure. So anytime you need extra abdominal work, you can press your tongue down low. Now, don't walk around with your tongue like this saying, oh, I'm activating my abdominals. That will give you a jaw difficulty, and then you'll have to just go to your osteopath, and the osteopath will say, what were you doing? Instead, when you walk around, rest your tongue on the floor of your mouth. Just rest your tongue there so that it gives the best opportunity for your jaw. The reason behind this, this activation is that the tissues that become the 5 muscles that fuse to become our tongue. These tissues, part of the pharyngeal arches, have been migrating up the front of our structure in embryological development. So those tissues remember their neurological relationships. Any suggestion on keeping one's mind under control during movements of intense realization of neuromuscular imbalances? Oh, that's such a good point. Yes, we might have to tune into Tom McCook's channel on mindfulness meditation. That's also hilarious. Play music, chant, actually chant. Chant to yourself. Chanting is good. Don't distract yourself by a phone call. That won't be helpful. Or don't think you're going to watch the news at the time. But I think chanting and music is helpful. Yes. Mm-hmm. Or you can call me and say, "What is this movement? Don't make me do this." Mm-hmm. So in prone position, most of the clients have trouble in anterior tilt. Yeah, how to help them. Okay, I'm with you there. So we just happen to have a ball on the set. That's what, Nora sits on the sitting box and I sit on the ball. So you could have the client rounded over the ball or on cushions or bolsters. Bolsters would be good. Inhale and aim the sitting bones up and back and wide. As you exhale, press your palms into the ground and drive to a posterior pelvic tilt. The take-home point of this is not what is your favorite prop, but the importance that it's necessary to lift the pelvis off the ground and lift the sternum off the ground so there's room to articulate the pelvis. Now, having the elbows bent and the forearms on the ground makes a requirement for the stability in the thoracic area, which not everybody has accessible. So pillows and bolsters, great thing to use. Thank you, everybody.
I'm going to say this for her. I can't express how much joy you are bringing to each and every one of us during this time. You are our movement and healing angel. I hope that you feel all of our love. I felt like I should say that because I think that's how many of you are feeling, and certainly how I'm feeling in watching this.
Thank you, Nora. Now, we have a special announcement to make for you. Be sure to tune in next week at this time because we have a special surprise, a guest, a Zoom bomber. And angels, I think angels with wings. You just pay attention to the deeper dive section that Nora and Joy are bringing to Pilates educators worldwide. And you might be able to guess, maybe we should make a special prize of who guesses who's going to make a guest appearance with wings. I have noticed quite a strong neural stretch in my legs, both last week and today. Is there anything specific I can do to avoid overstretching my nerves? Oh dear. Okay, it's not my intention to stretch anybody's nerves. Now, the architecture of nerves is such that they do not stretch. Nerves glide within their neural sheath, the neural sheath made of connective tissue, and that comprises of the neuromyofascial system. So when you notice the tugging sensation that feels nervy, immediately shorten your levers, okay, and decrease the range of motion, because nerves are not designed to stretch, and they don't take kindly to being stretched. That's dangerous. Don't stretch your nerves. Instead, coax your nerve tissue to glide. Only coax it. Don't insist on it. Yes, good. Okay.
All right, my friends. So a couple of things to remind you of. One is, if you would like more information on what we're doing and be able to follow along and share your experiences, the Fascia in Motion Facebook group has been set up. You're welcome to go to that, find it, and then ask to be invited into it. It is a private Facebook group that's designed for those of you who are working with Elizabeth and sharing this information. So come on and join us for that. It'll also let you know what's happening in the future. Recordings, I believe, will be posted there, and additional information. And there are some fantastic books that Elizabeth recommends. One is, of course, her amazing Fascia in Motion, but she's also got two other books from, also from Handspring, I believe. The Power of Grace by Joanne Elphinston, and Freedom to Move. I can't see that. Yeah.
Josephine Keith.
There we go, thank you. Also wonderful ways to look at efficient movement, effective movement, that wonderful complexity that Elizabeth brings to those are another wonderful resources for you, and there is a discount available for those books also on the Fascia in Motion webpage. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to more deeper dives next week. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Balanced Body.